Why is everyone talking about the fire horse? What is a fire horse? What is the year of the fire horse? Well, if you don't know astrology, you won't know. But luckily, I've got two experts, two brilliant, brilliant experts and beautiful, loving friends. We're going to go first with George H. Lewis. George, what
Yeah.
is a fire horse?
Well, I'm wearing the most amount of red. I mean, obviously, Laura's got some pretty impotent red behind her, pushing her into the light. Where me, I'm just wearing it today as the ingress into the new Chinese New Year. I mean, it's a really powerful archetype because, really, to put it succinctly, fire horse is kind of hot, hot fire horse. If you think of the archetype of a horse, it's always kinetic, it's in movement, it's powerful, it's strong, it's dynamic. And then you've got fire, the Aries energy. And so we are really going to get much more kinetic in how things unravel now we've shed our skin from the wood snake.
Brilliant. Laura, over to you, my love.
Yes, absolutely. Oh man, especially on a eclipse day. This is just so incredibly powerful. A ring of fire eclipse in Aquarius. So I just feel like the gates are opening and the horse is just like ready to go full throttle, full speed ahead. Um at the same time though, I mean, there was so much that people released last year. There's so much that the collective is releasing when it comes to whatever facades they were holding on to, whatever belief systems that kept them really dependent on a system that's now crumbling. And I feel that those of us that have been ready for this, those of us who have been privy to what's been going on, and all the individuals that have awakened recently and took all this, seriously, I really feel like we're not going upstream anymore against the current. Now the script is flipped and it's the other way around. Now the horse is taking us, in this fiery, transformative, like George said, kinetic and just like almost like there's a lot more room to breathe and do our missions and be taken more seriously. And where others might be feeling a little bit stunted in this forward moving, direction, I still feel there is a lot of release with Pluto in Aquarius and a lot of these outer planets shifting into new signs that once they, kind of release and they find that internal foundation, they'll be like feeling the surge as well because it's very inspiring. This is not about just the doom and gloom. Yes, there's mourning. Yes, there's outrage. Yes, it's mind blowing what is coming to the surface. A lot of us have been aware of these kind of things before, but for those that have maybe been in denial or just saw the headlines and didn't realize it was as big as it is, it's pretty devastating. But something is unearthing from deep within, which is really the foundation of sovereignty and living our truth. So I feel like that's the speed of the horse, the fire horse.
I love it. So many people waking up right now to the shock and horror and disgust, and they're falling apart because they can't believe that their global leaders, people they've loved and adored, are in these awful Epstein files, for example. Now, Epstein isn't the only demon on the planet. Epstein isn't the only single paedophile that shares his body with demonics. Who knows if he's alive or dead? That's yet to be seen, whatever. But we're looking at a crumbling down, a taking down of a planned dystopian future and present for everyone in humanity, even people that think that they're a level above, people that think they're going to be sorted out by their mates. They're finding out that their mates aren't there anymore because every single soul is affected in some way. There's nowhere or way or place for any single being on the planet right now to actually fully protect themselves. Some of us are having a day of victory on February 17th. Me, Dani Henderson, a day of victory for me, not such a day for other people of victory. And that's because there's different frequencies going on. Does it mean that my frequency is higher and better than the person that's not having a good day in opposition to me? No, it just means we're in different frequencies. Does it mean that they're lower? They're worse, they're inept, they're awful. Not at all. We're all in our own individual range of frequency. But if we're trying to drag people along with us and carry their frequencies too, we're going to be slowed down. Again, we are on a multi-dimensional track. We always have been. We're multi-dimensional beings, all having an individual journey, and we have to recognize that the healing has to come here, and we can't have any hangers on. We can't have any suckers in our field because it's not going to help. Now, in terms of astrology, it's incredibly important. It's a science of beauty, myth, legend. It creates story. It comes from story. It also comes from energy, doesn't it, George?
Yeah, I mean, everything really is myth in some ways. I mean, also the symbolism is very important. I mean, February 17th, 2026, I quite like that. I mean, the last fire horse year was a very potent time. It was 1966. And that, if you think about that, the Beatles was at its apex. You had Star Trek premiered that year, changing humanity's vision on how it not only sees its reality, but its future. The counterculture explosion. I mean, actually, if you go back to different years, you see I think it was an 80, yeah, it was 1846. Anesthesia was invented. I should always say reinvented because we've had Atlantis and Tartaria before. But the point is, great things happened during fire horse years. You see fire horse patterns. 1906 was the San Francisco earthquake and the first radio broadcast. If you think of the kinetic movement of information. And then 1966 was total cultural transformation. So this time it's maximum potency because it isn't just the entry point of the fire horse. It is also the ingress of the Saturn Neptune conjunction. And on the 19th, in 2 days' time, we're making this broadcast on the February the 17th, is the Saturn lunar matrix coming in to visibility alongside Neptune. Literally, let's read the symbols together. Neptune dissolving the Saturn lunar matrix at the 0 point of Aries. That's rather exciting. I'm surprised not more astrologers are talking about that. I
Well,
mean,
they're not,
seriously,
but they're not
but
you, George Lewis.
no, 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 no. But we're all in this together. And actually, to piggyback off to what you were saying, Danny, the age of Aquarius ultimately is you do you and I do me, in the sense of it is the individuation coming online, especially with the Aries energy, which is a nice sextile dance, is we all do it individually because we've all got our own track, our own soul journey, our own life lessons, our own karmic record, our own connection to the Akasha and above, to the ether. And so in some ways, when we all start to do it individually, then collectively we can breathe again. And I think this is what the fire horse is. It's much more kinetic. It doesn't have to be frenetic, though. This is where the meditation practice is so critical. The grounding in nature, as opposed to the transhuman alternative, which is a synthetic opposition, is barefoot on the ground, the structured water, the organic food, not the synthetic crap of Gates. And so we can be more kinetic because we're going to move fast to disclosure, which I'll now get to Danny's point on the disclosure of the Epstein. Epstein is just the linguistic file, if you like, the portal through which we learn about the horrors of our global civilization. I mean, I would suspect, and I know this psychically, intuitively, not professionally, because I'm not in military intelligence, but I would suspect what has been revealed to the population right now, which is vast, is no more than 10% of the downloads of the information, because it has to be drip, drip. And to bring the metaphor quickly to conclusion, as we leave the Piscean, yes, we go drip, drip into flood, but really it is alchemically the burning off of the dross. It is the alchemical fire. It is the phoenix rising. It is burning off all that detritus, all those viruses and negativities where the old Saturnian system, you see, Saturn is being burnt alive. Saturn is being also dissolved through Neptune. So the old British Empire, if you want to call it the old Jesuit, Sabbatean, Khazarian control system, the galactic negative control system, is being eviscerated, and it's going to be sped up in 2026. So we've been preparing through the shedding of the snake, and now we're getting active and we're going to see it. And we just have to stand in our brilliance and do it together, because we've all been manipulated. We're all in this together. There's no pointing of fingers. It's actually a very exciting time for massive cleansing of the human species.
Brilliantly said. Laura, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, this Neptune Aries conjunction, uh, 0 degrees coming up. I mean, it's so powerful. Everything is dissolving. I mean, Saturn ruling the law of structure has been in its shadow for so long. The rings of Saturn, how that relates to the moon, the Saturn moon matrix, like he was talking about, has like literally been the imbalance of the masculine and feminine, how outer authority has created dependency bonds with individuals that are constantly looking outside of oneself. So our amnesia has been leveraged, our vulnerabilities and fears have been exploited when it comes to dis-ease, when it comes to when something doesn't feel right, when emotion stirs, when anger stirs. It's all been weaponized. Go on pharmaceuticals. Don't go into the dark night of the soul. Don't initiate. Don't look at it. Don't go deep. And that's been cracking open for a while. People working with plant medicine, that's very Neptune. People being able to see through dark Saturn and begin to find their own personal self-authority. But that's literally what this represents on a collective level. Saturn conjunct Neptune dissolves the structures and the authorities that exist outside of us, and it turns the authority back on ourselves. Where do we need boundaries? Where are we manifesting our future, and what is getting in the way? What do we still need to clear? What cords do we still need to cut? Now that things are moving really fast, those things should come up really, really quickly. And I just feel like there's a bulldozer that just is knocking down those barriers because it doesn't have any leg to stand on anymore. Any outside narratives, any false flags, any psyops, there's nothing that it can hook into that won't, in a human consciousness, now fully question it and say, wait a second, look at who it's coming from. And actually, those voices aren't strong anymore. They're sitting there apologizing. They're trying to explain themselves out of this mess. And, they say we can't prosecute everybody. The system will crumble. Well, the system has crumbled for so many. It has to crumble from within. We win the war on consciousness from within. And it crumbles through our willingness to not consent, our willingness to stand strong in our truth and be resourceful, be creative, and understand that cosmic and natural law and the power of this planet and the consciousness and DNA that's awakening from dormancy is the ultimate human embodiment of abundance, of magic, miracles, synchronicities, of life supporting your authentic truth and you living your mission versus the reward and punishment system that basically has been rewarding people for complying and punishing people for questioning or censoring or gaslighting. So all of this is crumbling. All of this is crumbling, and it's happening within each individual. The energetic cords between humans and dark Saturn are dissolving along with the rings, along with the dark technologies that are being de-weaponized. The frequency of truth and being able to face that Chiron, especially Chiron squaring Jupiter, retrograding still till March, is asking us to look at the mother wound, look at our own, deep emotional wounds connected to suppression of emotion, connected to the targeting of the nuclear family, sacred union relationships, and everything that is very instinctual for a divine human to want to gravitate towards. This level of social engineering that has thrown people into the superficial, the divide and conquer, the victimhood that is very much the shadow of Neptune and how control systems like to prey on that. Now it's like accountability. Now it's awareness of we don't have to be victims. We're creative. We can override this. We are overriding it. We are the powers that be that are taking our power back, and we're determining the future from this point forward. And that Aries is the solar plexus, the ego identity saying, I'm a divine human. I'm no longer compartmentalized, labeled, shuffled into this narrative, that narrative, and put against my brothers and sisters or the bigger picture of this galactic family that we're connected with. The veils are lifting because Saturn is no longer the lid that is suppressing. It's now an open container. And it's asking us to embrace our multidimensional and galactic. And as disclosure comes out, it's going to be very, very hard for any falsity to be steered anymore. And even if they were to attempt, it's like, there's a few more fishermen left and maybe a few more groups of people or individuals that are going to, bite the bait. There might be a lot of weaponized versions of all of this as it tries to replace the falling system with a different version of itself that acts like it's the new. I mean, we have to still be incredibly discerning, but the thing is, it's not about it being outside of ourselves anymore. It's about that personal sovereignty and harmonizing with other sovereign individuals. And when I say sovereign, I mean you live your truth. You're not dependent on something outside of you. You embrace your soul, your intuition, your guidance from your higher mind. And in that comes integrity. In that comes unity consciousness and the desire to harmonize and not be at war and as far as information goes. And like you said, Dani, what level of soul development you're at. Because there can be a very well-intentioned person who's been duped and a very awakened person to conspiracy who can be completely out of integrity and completely toxic. So we're all at these different levels. And I just see it now we're coming together. We're helping each other switch on what's dormant. We're realizing the gift and blessing of each and every soul. And we're, with the compassion that Neptune brings us and the empathy, more able to move out of, any, kind of judgment about it. It's like everybody's traumatized. And now it's time to look at that trauma on an ancient galactic level, on the depth of what we've endured in our ancient history throughout all these dark cycles of our human experience, and to really come together and say, let's make this easy on each other. Let's love each other. Let's walk through this trauma together, with spiritual maturity and honesty. That's what's going to bring, massive transformation. So I just really see the higher octave of Neptune and the law of structure of Saturn, boundaries, self-mastery, the discipline to know what works for you in your life and what doesn't, versus disciplines and rules that suppress and confine and enslave. So the script is being flipped, and I feel like it's a domino effect, and there's no turning back. And especially after this powerful entry point that we're in today, moving into this 0 degrees Neptune Saturn. Yeah, there's really no turning back. And I just see that the pain that people experience is an opportunity that they're going to see to really get closer to the self, and to unleash, where creative energy has been blocked, where negative mind patterns have fed the body a lot of toxicity and a lot of imbalance. And it's now not going to cause more digression. It's going to be an opportunity for people to come home again. And there's going to be massive healing. And I think the bioweapons are going to be de-weaponized, and everything that has turned us into this devolving or digressive human trajectory of New World Order is on the upswing. And we've been waiting for this for a long time. We've held it in our hearts and our souls. So many people have held it and didn't even realize that they were holding it. And that's why their body revolted with disease. Now it's time to understand why, and live to the fullest, be embodied, be the embodied divine human we came here to be, because nobody really likes these lower mentalities. It's usually covering up trauma. It's usually covering up insecurity. It's usually covering up the shame of being wounded, and there's no shame in it. So let's do this, guys. Humanity.
George, before I come back to you, there's elements of like, we are the ancestors. We are the returning ancestors. I remember living in Hawaii, but also visiting for like a 20-year period over especially the island of Kauai, where I actually ended up living for some time. And there was always saying, they were always like, they didn't like us. They call us howlies, us white people, the original indigenous Hawaiians, and you can't blame them, because every white person, or from America, for example, came and stole their islands, took their lands from them to this very day. But I would walk around thinking, well, I know this place. This is a home. I've been here. I have past lives here. I had amazing, beautiful experience with the ancient Lemurians there that I'd never heard of. And there they are. I met them. And anyway, I've told that story so many times on my channel. So we are the returning ancestors. We all have a right to be here, and we should all be working together. One of the worst things for humans is admitting that they are wrong. It's very difficult when we're on a trajectory and we're gung-ho, and we've studied and we've listened to people and we've been influenced, and maybe we've been compromised and didn't realize. It's okay to say, I was wrong. I've been compromised. I'm getting some healing. I'm doing the work. It's time for every soul, without exception. George, before we started recording today, you mentioned that you've been on your travels in Latin America. You also mentioned the CIA and the destruction of the British Empire. Please, could you share with the lovely people?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a big subject, but it's really absolute the core of what's going on is understanding. And I've followed Promethean action for quite some time, and Susan Kukinda is excellent, and many of her team speak of this. I mean, really, astrologically, we're experiencing the battle between sovereign nation states on the one hand and empire on the other. And I remember growing up in Cornwall and watching Poldark. And I remember when Poldark, this amazing archetypal character, he comes from a posh background, but he's with the people, and he went to fight in the Revolutionary Wars against the United States, he came back and he realized he was on the wrong side. It's powerful
Oh
stuff.
yeah.
And that's a Pluto cycle ago with the Revolutionary Wars. And here we are again. But this time it's different because the British Empire is being exposed. It's being properly exposed for what it is. If you look at the real facts, new factories are breaking ground here in the United States. The productive spirit of the American people is roaring back to life. And the loony left and the naysayers, the empire defendants, they don't have an alternative economic policy. They just don't. They want globalization because they want communism. They want global tyranny. And you look at the French Revolution, you see, and really what we're watching is a 200-year playbook by the British Empire. It's a British intelligence operation. It's a long story, but France was poised to adopt the American system a Pluto cycle ago. And the British imperial model, and especially the great philosopher Jeremy Bentham, he wrote some amazing treatises rebuffing the rebuttal of the American Declaration of Independence. And he would argue that human creativity is impossible and that there's no such thing as noble truth and self-government is nonsense. And he believed that basically we're all animals and we need to be kept in pens. And they kind of won and they set up the reign of terror in France and controlled through espionage and very clever tactics and sabotaged the great American experiment, the great Atlantean revival, the American dream. And then, of course, after the Revolutionary Wars, as I've mentioned many times, the United States got sabotaged from within because they had to turn to the European banking system so profoundly after the Civil War of 1871, when the United States was turned into a corporation. And we see the final nail in the coffin with the sinking of the Titanic, with the great Astor on board, who was anti the federal banking system, the central banking system, and then of course the Federal Reserve was rolled into action literally a few months later. I mean, it's just so obvious when you start to see it. And so down in the southern part of the Great Americas, where I've been for the last 2+ months, you see the massive suppression of the peoples and the compliance and the archetype of the actual fighter, the defender, the actual extremist fighter, sadly went into the narco industry. So the fighting spirit was inverted into the drugs trafficking and all the nonsense of Colombia, Mexico, and Venezuela. And then the rest of the population had been subjugated into this sort of mental mind soup of indoctrination and mind control. And also kept in the lower chakras in some ways. You see, the South part of the Americas is it's very sensual, it's very bodily, it's very connected, and they live in that, but they're not able to bring it up to the heart and up to the crown and the pineal by opposition. The North, the eagle, if you like, as far as metaphor rather than the condor, the masculine stays actually in the upper part, mental. Now, of course, the pineal gland is totally calcified and the crown is shut, but it's still in the mental realm and it can't get into the body. So what you have is you have the North and the South not really speaking to each other. And really, what we're doing, this is a great metaphor, we're going to integrate all the chakras now as Saturn, the great old chronotic system of control, of time, of manipulation, is being totally eviscerated. So the individuation is coming back online. And so both the South, the Americas is going to come together, not by losing its identity. On the contrary, and Venezuela will regain their identity. They will get back their true spiritual essence, as will Mexico, as will North America. Forget Canada and what we call the USA. These are all really, at the end of the day, the Americas is going to come together in a much more coherent fashion. It's going to take some time because we've got to unlearn everything we've been told. And that's what's really happening for us as a species. I can't remember the quote offhand, but the greatest challenge today is not what you know, it's being prepared to unlearn what you thought you knew.
That's so very true. Laura, earlier you spoke about, and I quote, the Cryon square in Jupiter. Now, can you explain to us what does that mean? What is the Cryon square and how does it affect Jupiter?
Yeah, so Chiron, the wounded healer, has to do with everything from childhood wounds to, traumas that people are carrying. It's really like if there's any asteroid that represents pain or celestial body, it's Chiron. And pain can become purpose. Like Chiron is the wounded healer. Chiron takes us on a healing path. We can't ignore Chiron, especially when it's squaring any planet. In our natal chart and transits, the transits that we're currently experiencing. So Chiron has been on and off squaring Pluto. It was squaring Mars last year. And when it was squaring Mars, it had a lot to do with ego identity wounds, where that was also being targeted. Who's the biggest victim? We see all these movements, and this group is more victimized than that group, and you're privileged, and this all the stuff that we see there, gender confusion, just the wounding of ego identity. Who am I? And for those that may be very strong in feeling mission driven, or who consider themselves star seeds, those children are very targeted. So there's those wounds. Then there's the wound of bioweapon, just blah. I feel like we can almost say a lot more than ever before, but I want to be
Yeah.
careful. So and then when it moved into the Chiron square Pluto, which is on and off, it has to do with the level of toxicity, reaching a breaking point where the wounds, where the pain, where the traumas literally are either stunting our growth and holding us back, and creating even more uh, digression, even death, or it's launching people onto a very powerful transformative healing process. And as Pluto moved into Aquarius after retrograding, it was really, rising from the ashes of this wounded humanity and being like, hey, this is why I'm here. This is my purpose. I'm going to take, the wounds of past generations ancestrally, on a collective level, on a societal level, on a galactic history level, and carry it forward. And be, this warrior healer. And that's what the Mars square Chiron is. But now with the Chiron squaring Jupiter in Cancer, it has a lot to do with what's holding me back, though. Why is it so difficult? Oh, maybe there's mother wounds. There's a really incredible book called Mother Hunger, people that didn't get their needs met when they were very small or growing up. There's almost a constant self-sabotage, or this feeling of not being loved enough, not getting enough nurturing. And sometimes that is the deep wound that, and it's coming up to the surface in different ways for many people. It could be the wound of being a mother. It could be feeling into the collective mother wound connected to Mother Earth, and seeing the geoengineering and realizing socially engineered people and geoengineering goes hand in hand. So what is that wound? What is the wound of the mother? Where has the Cancer sign turned into an epidemic of disease? Where have we lost connection with the mother? So there's a lot of healing connected with that. Chiron's connected with the 13th sign of Fiacus, connected to the ether element, ruled by Chiron. So Chiron is our opportunity to bring the wounds to the surface and allow unconditional love to come in, to be that alchemical force of allowing nurturing to come in, the unconditional love of the mother, the connection with nature, the understanding that the trajectory of this planetary system, and the alignments that know exactly how to heal its planetary system from invasion, intrusion, infiltration, and this overlay of reversal grid technology that's simulated these artificial timelines. The mother wound has to be addressed for us to truly, truly heal and realize, what we've disconnected from, we're running away from. But can we face it now? Because the addiction matrix is playing on that ancient wound of disconnect from the mother, the way that the divine feminine has been exiled and the masculine, divine masculine, has gone off to war or not connected deep within to the divine feminine within. And it goes beyond gender. It has to do with integration of polarity. It has to do with embracing the elementals that we are, that are charged with the electric magnetic and the masculine feminine, that work together, So also the wounding of family is Cancer, home. When people lose their homes to fires or, these incredible storms, there's a lot of rebuilding happening. So a lot of people are facing the wound on that level. Broken families, divorce, all that kind of stuff. So that's really like being looked at right now. So anytime Chiron's in square, it means we're looking at it, but it's not comfortable.
Can I ask you
It,
this, Laura? Would you also support this argument that Jupiter, because it's exalted in Cancer, making a square, even if it's a tough one, a square, it ultimately has some positive resolution
of
towards more
course.
spiritual success, you see. So in some ways, it's quite a good year to heal the wounds.
Oh, absolutely. And
Yeah.
that's the beauty of it. facing wounds that you can't ignore gives us the
Right.
opportunity to not be in denial, to not just grab something to appease the pain, to not run from it, to not mask it, which is very often what people do
Yeah.
with wounds. This is how people are raised to handle wounds. You go to the doctor, you only deal with the physical, and whatever else is going on, take something to make it go away. If it's depression, if it's anger, if it's some sort of trauma, yeah, you can talk it out to a certain degree, but the kind of lifestyle that we're encouraged to live, 9 to 5, or just work, career driven, that's opposite of Cancer. There's never been balance between the lunar moon Cancer and the Saturn Capricorn, and that integration of the family unit, the connection with Mother Earth, the connection with our own internal emotional energy of nurturing. Uh, you know, it's now time to look at that and embrace that. Um, so more time spent handling these things,
Yeah.
working on ancestral patterns, working on unconscious traumas that impact the physical body, with the nodal axis being activated during the eclipse time, with Aquarius actually being lit up before, the full-on Pisces again. It's very, interesting to see, how this wound is actually really serving us. And that's why Ophiuchus, the ether element, is not in reversal anymore, because now humanity's ready to say, let's look at the wounds. Let's turn the wounds into wisdom. Let's see where this dysfunction or this pain can turn into a diamond or a crystal, or be the guiding force behind, ascension. And so everywhere that Chiron shows up is an opportunity for alchemy. So the squares mean conflict and challenge and difficulty when facing it. When it's in alignment, like a trine or sextile, there's more grace and ease and flow. It might be easier to just jump on board a healing trajectory. The square means that sometimes for people there's a crisis. Sometimes you hit a wall and you have to look at it. You cannot run from it
But it
anymore.
can be
And
such a massive, it can be such a massive breakthrough if you play it right, right? That's the great thing, especially with Jupiter there, where sometimes I notice with people with trines and sextiles, they can be a bit lazy.
Right. Well, Jupiter expands everything it touches, so the
Yeah.
square is going to be that much louder. And
Yes.
sometimes in harmony, a person can become very complacent, very indulgent, and take things for granted. Absolutely. So, the beauty with squares is they're catalysts, or for some people, they can be in a negative loop.
Yeah.
And that negative loop can be covered up with something to avoid, right? Narcissists avoid trauma. Empaths tend to face trauma or just want to heal everybody else instead of themselves, right? So how we handle it depends. But if the collective can look at this wound that we cannot escape, the wound of what this Mother Earth has experienced with the blood of her veins, of her children, of, all of this being vampired, and our energies, our creative energies being harvested and siphoned to battery up something engineered and false, we got to get to the core wound. We've been disconnected from the mother. Mythologies and religions have been rewritten and distorted in order to disconnect us, in order to keep sort of this patriarchal authority alive, and the feminines sort of squashed. And it's not about the battle between genders. It's about understanding that union from within and
Yeah.
honoring both. So that is definitely what these times are about. So as the horse, moves forward, I feel like it's it's willing to face the uncomfortable, and the nurturing energy can bring out a lot more expansion, and allowing God force to intervene through us by being that pillar of light, of compassion, of um connection. Because we're in a world where the addiction matrix is, don't look at those traumas. If you heal those traumas, you begin to trace them back, then you're going to find out the galactic history that we've been hiding from you. Then we're going to, have to look at, all this other stuff. So, it's just been take a pill, drink some alcohol, run away. Now the horses, I feel like it's running towards the goal and not running into escapism anymore. We're going to face this head on now. And the discomfort is a beautiful thing. Because pain means your body doesn't want you to ignore it anymore.
Yeah.
It has to find a
Consciously.
new new, it
Yeah.
has to find a new way. I think every single human being, me included, has no real comprehension yet of just how manipulated we've all been in our lives in every single sector. And I think that's what's going to be made visible with Saturn's ingress now and conjunction with Neptune in Aries with this solar eclipse is it's free fall, and the manipulation is so deep, so intense. And one of the great ones, of course, is the Second World War, and so much stuff starting to come out about that. And it's really tough for people. But I think with the Firehorse year, we're going to see a lot of cosmic support, whether it's Three Eye Atlas or other energetics to support, and Jupiter in its exaltation right through July 4th, is we're going to be supported in a way that when new disclosure comes out, it's going to make even our historical record look insignificant in terms of our reality. And in that sense, it is a massive recalibration point for humanity. We're standing, between an old world of total manipulation and control, which is the negative Piscean, the psyche, control of the psyche, and now we're going to step into this entire new world, and this is the ancient battle between Saturn and Neptune, Saturn and Uranus. In the myth, Saturn castrates his father Uranus. So we have a choice now of not repeating old karmic cycles, of moving away, consciously stepping into this new evolutionary frequency, which we're doing actually very beautifully. And the drip drip effect, whether it's Epstein files, and that's just a metaphor for so much more, has to play out. It has to be coordinated. I believe there is a positive hidden hand. I really do, allowing for humanity to digest, to realize. And it's painful. If it was too sudden, it would be too catastrophic
Oh,
because we've all been so
absolutely.
brainwashed, you know.
I
Yeah.
agree. Because hurt people when they are not given the opportunity to look at it. There's knee-jerk reactions, there's the fight or flight, and then the lack of accountability, and it just grows and grows. And yeah, so it can't happen all at once, but for some, the floodgates have been open for a long time, and it's flooding people. People can pace themselves, right? Somebody can go down rabbit holes and spend every night exploring what's already out there, and some might just need the tapping before you go into deep tissue to warm
Yeah,
up the muscles before you just jump right in. You might injure yourself. But the beauty is we get to set the pace. And that's the thing with the
yeah,
horse. If we need to pull back a little bit,
yeah,
the independence of, my sovereign self is determining the speed at which I want to move.
yeah.
Saturn is like, I will accommodate that structure for you, your own personal sense of discipline for the self, your own personal authority, instead of outer authority, which has absolutely been, corrupt, that people have feared, they don't want to get in trouble. All those mommy daddy pictures, the wounded family has created this surrogate parenting from society that has been nothing but abusive and covering up horrific crimes. So,
There we go.
now it's time to return to true source, divine blueprint that is our true inheritance,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
loves us unconditionally, would not ever do anything like what we've seen.
Exactly. The original blueprint, the original field, the original human field that it was in existence, it's still there. We have to come back into it. You mentioned Poldark earlier, and the fact that he went off to war fighting for something and he came back and realized he'd been duped and he was fighting for the wrong side. There's been many different Poldarks made over the years, always with a very handsome lead. Was it one year, just to change slightly the subject and just lighten it up a little bit, was it one of those handsome four James Bond types that was it Timothy? What was his name?
Dalton.
Yeah, was that him? Gorgeous, very Scottish looking, black hair, blue eyes. Was it him that played the lead role of Poldark one year?
No, Aidan
Oh,
Turner. Aidan Turner, he's even more handsome.
oh God. Oh, I feel quite faint. Well, again, just to go back to the fact that, like you say, people get ramped up and riled up and they're fighting a cause and then they realize, oh my God, What was I thinking? I got swept up in the story. People who've just met each other are never more at risk of being vulnerable, because when you don't have any history with someone, you're in this open, energetic field of instant trust, and you don't question, and you just fall into this, and it's like, oh, my new best friend kind of thing, energy and feeling, and everything they tell you, you believe because you've got no history with them, you don't know them. You think everything they say naturally is true because that's how we've been programmed. It completely and utterly. And then when we do realize that, oh my God, I'm a poldark. I went down the wrong road. I fought for the wrong person. I was their Rottweiler. I was their protector or whatever. And you come back and you realize that is a desperately upsetting thing to realize. On the
It's
same,
also incredible, but it's also incredibly heroic.
yes, oh yes. Well, to make the shift, you mean? To make
I
the
mean,
shift.
I just implore everyone. I mean, I've watched both series. One was, I don't know, from the early 80s, whatever, and the other one was 5, 7, 8 years ago, recent. I mean, the recent one, I mean, it was all filmed near my family farm in Cornwall, and it's just so epic because it tells you such a good story of good versus evil, and really what the true blue, as Laura says, the true human blueprint is the chivalry, the true chivalry of the archetype of Poldark and his beautiful wife, where she comes from nothing, but she's so noble, and the deceit within the upper classes and the shenanigans and the corruption from London, and here we are again. You see, it's a great lesson. It's a great story of human survival, but also human brilliance and our connection to the land, our connection to our fellow brethren, how he looks after with so little money his community. He literally takes the shirt off his back to support his community. You know, these are the ancient tin mines of Cornwall, and of course, Cornwall is a very special part because tin is corresponds to Jupiter, the great benefic, and that's why one of the reasons why Cornwall is so sacred is because of the ancient tin that comes from there, and it provided for the Roman Empire and maybe for Tartaria. We don't really know, but Cornwall has played a very important part, like Ireland, and yet it's been utterly suppressed by the central authority, Saturn, and that's being revealed today. So go and watch Poldark.
Before I come back to you, Laura, on a point we raised earlier, George, Tartaria, it's being exposed. I've got one of the greatest speakers on the planet speaking at my next conference. His name is Guy Anderson. He is so exciting.
Uh,
His decades of study and his brilliant books, you've probably both heard of him. He's all over the internet and he's all over my channel. Um,
Amazing.
yeah, and so I was looking for, knowing that over the centuries of redacted history that's all been hidden from us on every single level, every single country's got hidden redacted. It's like when the Serbs and the Croats, they fighting, and the Kurds and the, oh my God, the whole of Eastern Europe, you know, now we've got Serbia and we've got all of that destruction, Yugoslavia. We know that they've used different names and piled a different name and then moved a town and named it over here, and on many different levels and many different subjects. But so I was looking for the other name for Tartaria, not Tartary, not Tartaria, but it's called Sabir, the Kingdom of Sabir, Sabir. Here is yet another dive into other hidden. And so those of us that have ancient books, ancient atlases, ancient maps, we've got to go all the way back before they started redacting and changing the system. So those of you out there who have a fascination for Tartaria, which is on the front line right now, go look up Sabir. What are you going to
I mean,
say, George?
well, it's just because you bring it up. I just want people just to take a deep breath and think, why was Dresden so bombed? Just and let's and then we don't need to answer it now. This is where the breath is so important because for
Mm.
us in truly Aquarian, I implore you all to ask the question. Why was Dresden so bombed? What did it have? What were those cathodes, which is where the word cathedral comes from? What were they doing with ether and akasha? Yes.
And for those that don't know, Dresden is in Germany.
Yeah.
So, Laura, before we started recording, When we were talking about, George is going to talk about the destruction of the Roman Empire and the CIA and his travels in Latin America, it fell onto beautifully you and your great grandfather, President Dwight Eisenhower of America. And you beautifully said, and I wrote it down, that he had to work with what he had. Now, can you go into more detail about that, but also how it applies astrologically and how it applies to every person watching this right now?
Wow, yeah. I mean, so much happened before he stepped into office in connection with the establishment of three-letter organizations, supposed unconditional surrender instrument that took place in 1952 when the UFOs flew over the Capitol. A lot of false narratives trying to cover things up. When we look at the astrology, I mean, we're emerging into a time of truth, right? Where the false cannot hold on any longer. This is a prophesized window period that has had a lot of attention and projection on it. And I feel in his administration, they knew that this was coming. A lot of souls that incarnated during a lot of dark cycles of history knew about this powerful window period because there's been this kind of showdown of forces and timeline wars going on. Temporal management supposedly is connected to something that Ike established called Ike's Force in order to correct where time travel manipulation created the potential of humanity going down a very, very dark trajectory because it goes against a greater law to tinker like that. So, you know, he had to set countermeasures in place. And the reason it didn't become public is because there were 30 levels of top secret above the president, and they were able to sort of beam a men in black or some sort of being into your room and basically threaten your life. And it was written into law that you would be imprisoned and fined and all these different things if you were to disclose this stuff. So three-letter organizations and MJ12 really, you know, took the alien technology and began to covertly, you know, work with that. And the more he found out, the more furious he became, and he had the help of Al Thor. So supposedly he set up Ike's Force, which are vigilantes that didn't work together because working together made it more dangerous. Um, and uh and they were basically tasked with different missions in order to take down some of these individuals and work with the timeline manipulation. And then the White Hats and the Earth Alliance. So this, you know, carries over from before him. And this isn't just about his administration. This is about all of us. So I feel when he was briefed about a descendant coming in and about how um, myself and so many were going to work together, we were going to be the ones that were going to overthrow the deep state. And this was what I feel the most important amount of information he could have gotten, the most significant information that he received, that I was very in touch with growing up, that I was going to find more like-minded people, people that were mission oriented, people that were connected to bringing about the truth, bringing about disclosure, giving voice to those that have been silenced, ridiculed, misunderstood, and to dig, you know, into these narratives and to try and get to the bottom of things. There's so many of us doing it, and we're working together, and here we are, the three of us, you know, and our colleagues and friends, and we've seen what can happen when there's plants and when there's disruption and when there's tactics to really you know, create you know, destruction and more divide and conquer. So
Laura,
um
can I ask you something just as you flow, because you really are quite an
I don't know if
expert
I'm flowing, but
on Chiron. In 1952, I've just looked it up. We had Uranus at around 10 degrees, making an exact square with Saturn at 10 degrees Libra, which is actually quite interesting in 1952. And it, because of the retrograde cycle, it bounces off that exact square most of 1952, and it makes an opposition, Uranus, to Chiron at 12 degrees Capricorn. That is definitely an archetypal energy of the battle between Saturn and Uranus, between the ancient old Babylonian system, Saturn on the one hand, and Uranus bringing in the new. The problem was for Dwight Eisenhower is Saturn was in his exaltation, which it probably goes just astrologically to explain why the light wasn't able to win at that time. What do you think
but
about
the thing,
that?
yes. What I feel is, you know, it was seeded to win.
Yes.
It was always going to win because this is an ascension planet. The way that things have progressed with the government structure, with the secret space programs, with everything that went, underground bases, experimentation. 1929 was when the real treaties began, with
Yeah.
abduction, with people going missing, with experimentation, or putting bases on Moon and Mars and all this, different stuff. So basically, the shadow government has been the government. The government that we see, the presidents and those that are in positions of so-called power, have really just been pawns. And Eisenhower definitely wasn't that. And he, stood up against this. And the thing is, he's just an example of all of us. He didn't put himself on a pedestal. Nobody should put him on a pedestal, because, this is something that we all have to do in our own lives. So I feel that what the seed was of the light winning was dismantling all of this, which is what we're seeing today. He might have set some things in motion to preserve and protect what humanity was inevitably going to wake up to. But as far as I'm concerned, it's always been a teamwork. It's always been souls coming in, remembering who they are, standing their ground, and speaking truth. And where you might be compromised, you don't give up. You find another way. You don't give your power away. You find another way. So now there's so many of us that they can't just off you. They can't threaten your family. They can't do those kind of things. They can maybe put the threat out there and cause a lot of nervous system distress, but where's safety in numbers? Whereas
Yeah.
before that wasn't the case. And so people were getting wiped out and knocked out, and false narratives covering up things, even whistleblowers not getting the real information. So I really feel, that was an injury to the light, but at the same time, just like
A
Chiron,
seed point. It was a seed point.
it
Yeah.
was a seed point. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so he's one of many, that whole administration, they had many, many people that were on board with this, many
Yeah.
souls that have been incarnating for a long time, connected to the Essenes, connected to the Christ Templars, connected to the Aquafarians, and all these ancient groups that had to go underground or incarnated a later time.
And JFK and Nixon,
Forward.
and JFK and Nixon, and trying their best, in limited successful ways. Reagan as well. Yep.
They could leave us breadcrumbs, and they
Yep.
could set up enough to keep a positive military alive that would not be completely overtaken. But again, it's a domino effect. Each soul that wakes up impacts then 100, 1,000, or more people.
which
So
which kind of segues slightly. I don't know whether this is, I think it's important, is, from my perspective, Trump, and this, my mentor even challenges me on this, and she's brilliant, but she gets a bit upset with me because she thinks I could be naive. But I feel it's a sense of prophecy. You see, I feel Trump is playing a master poker game. And he's here constantly bluffing, playing the hoax, and so the Epstein files, by showing that he's in it because he was an FBI informant, he's in it a lot. He's labeled in it. It's got the entire parties, liberals, everyone to declare their release. And by having them released, and they're not all fully released yet, it's almost like it's inevitable that we're all, as a civilization, going to clamber to have these crooks put behind bars and brought to justice. And so, in that
it's part
sense,
of this
I'm very
greater.
positive.
Oh, sorry. Yep. Sorry.
I'm
Say that
just
again.
in this sense, I'm very positive that it's playing out in a way that our children's children will look back at the Q psyop that is a positive psyop, will look back and say this is one of the greatest stories this is the story of humans' evolutions at this time. Without this, we would have descended and been eradicated and transhumated, and this is our ascension process.
Transhumanate. That's a good word. Yeah.
Yeah.
So brilliant.
Absolutely.
You two just flow so beautifully. I wanted to mention that if we look at today, February 17th, 2026, in terms of the ancient science of numbers, which we know is called numerology, today comes to number 2. 2 represents the partnership. The partnership can be between two people. It can be between the negative and the positive side of self, especially during your healing. It can be bringing in the balance of the masculine and the feminine energies that exist within all of us. Some people also look at that as the yin and the yang. You see that ancient symbol, the black and white, the balance of the two, the dark, the light. So being in terms of today, number 2, representing partnership, it's looking at your friendships, your love, romance, partnerships. Of course, we just had February 14th, whatever, the other day. For those that care. But you know, it's a lovely day for people in love, and it's a nice day for them to express their love, of course. I'm glad I don't live in America anymore, because when I worked around the schools, all the children in the whole class have to give each other Valentine's cards. The whole bloody class. It was always a time of stress for children when I was working with them. And I felt so sorry for them. And there were some children, you know, that didn't like Billy and didn't want to give Billy a Valentine's card. You know what I mean? But the teachers encouraged it. But anyway, I digress slightly. But partnership, looking at maybe friendships that have collapsed, you know, work colleagues, all kinds of things, looking with a pure heart and taking responsibility on both sides. It is a fast way to expedite healing. It prevents spiritual bypassing, which so many people are doing. Don't do it. Anchor in. Look at the partnership with self, the partnership with friends, lovers, everybody. You know, because there's a level there that everyone on the planet is a mirror, and we are being reflected back as to how and who we are. And it takes a courageous person, again, to say, in this time of ascension, with all these energies that we're all integrating, being in this multi-dimensional war that we are all in, who are we in this? What are we in this, truly? We're energy. We're energy in motion. We're a beautiful soul. We're a returning ancestor. We're here in this moment, on this day, in this timeline, to do something. But to number one, to heal, to be honest, to love, self-preservation. If I could just whisk a wish over the entire world, I would say to everyone, I don't mean the self-appointed, self-anointed leaders that we are taking down, where as we dismantle the Roman Empire globally, I would say to everyone, do not obey. Do not kowtow to authority. The other day I saw the pig farm. I call it the pig farm. It's the Houses of Parliament in Great Britain. It's where all of the leaders, the prime ministers, the senators, all of the decision makers on my planet, they all assemble. And they all make noises of a farm. They're either mooing, moo, woo, 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 or oink, 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 oink. I'm not joking. I'm not going to pull up the clip, but go and have a laugh, everyone, at how embarrassing the British Parliament is, also known as the pig farm. So these people are making decisions for my life, your life, and everybody else's life, but they're not admitting that they're owned by the World Economic Forum, and that is not allegedly. So don't be obeying, don't be letting authority tell you what to do. Don't fall into gangs, don't fall into gaggles. Focus on your self-healing. The other day, my friend Alex Collier put out, and your friends too, you guys know him too, he's friends of yours too. You went traveling with him. Do you remember, Laura? Was that 2020 or 2021 when he drove you back almost all the way to Montana, right?
Yeah, from
That was
Shasta.
funny.
I
That was
believe
so
it was
funny.
like 2023. Yeah, it was great
No,
to
it
get
wasn't. It was earlier. It was before my first conference. So it's got to be
okay.
around 2021. It was when
Okay.
the Greys were captured in the jump room. And then remember, we were going to breakfast, and Alex went, Dani, come here. I've got something to tell you. And he's like, you lot go to breakfast. I'm like, what's happening? What's happening? He's like, the Greys were captured. And then in a jump room. And it was the beginning of the start of the undoing of the Orion Nebula Network. But right back then. But he was saying, did this beautiful little film the other day. And you've got all these buffaloes running into the storm, and you've got all these cows running away from the storm. And even before his voice came over, I'm like, I'm a buffalo. I'm going to run right into that storm and just get on the other side of it. I'm going to face it. And it's so interesting. And it wasn't, for me, a lesson in, oh, look at me, look at my huge ego. No. It was an instant feeling towards what I was looking at before I was influenced by, are you a buffalo or are you a cow? I mean, there's lots of people that would definitely call me a cow, and I'm fine with that too. But in that instance, I was looking at the buffalo. I wanted to come back because we're coming up to our time now. I've got my beautiful GISIC meetings in just a few minutes with my American team. You mentioned, George, you said a Pluto cycle. What, pray tell, is a Pluto cycle, my love?
Well, Pluto takes 248 years to do a solar rotation. So you watch, I mean, Pluto was at 26, 27 degrees Capricorn in the United States birth chart. And so we saw with the advent of Trump and in the timeline shift to 2017, Pluto was close to that mark, certainly during that presidency. And now we have the Pluto in Aquarius, which in some ways is the cycle of putting the Constitution down, the reenaction, the reinvention, the reimagination of the United States Constitution. And so we're in a Pluto cycle, meaning we're in a rebalancing and a reinvention and a reimagining of the United States as a concept because it got hijacked, as I've already mentioned. And so when we look at the Pluto, it's to do with that cycle because it's quite a long cycle in our solar system. I mean, obviously the outer planets like Sedna and Eris are much bigger, but as far as our what we know in our solar system, Pluto plays a very transformative role, doesn't it, Laura, in how we see ourselves. Yeah.
For sure. Death, rebirth, alchemy, transformation. And yeah, just shedding like the wood snake. The snake is very symbolic of this. And to me, it's, very much the creative cauldron, where we go into that dark night of the soul. We're not afraid of our own inner dark. We plant seeds in the soil, in the soul, in order to, manifest. But we have to release, what doesn't serve us. It's cyclical. It's part of the seasons. It's powerful. So in Aquarius, yeah, there's a shadow
Belief
side to
system.
every planet. Is it a transformation into transhumanism or a transformation into the human being the most advanced technology by understanding what's dormant and bringing life back to what's been dormant?
And belief systems. Mercury is exalted in Aquarius. It's important for us all to move out of our old antiquated belief systems. So when Pluto, which moved in last year, and it's there until the mid 2040s, it's massive shift in who we are, our ontology, our epistemology, very much a concept of who we are as a species is going to be irrevocably and magnificently shifted in terms of our perception over the next decade.
Laura, you've always spoken, as long as I've known you, which is some years now, but you've always spoken about alchemizing within, alchemizing everything within, which is so beautiful and so important right now to focus on. You also mentioned during this conversation, you said very clearly, the war on consciousness is within. Do you recommend people focusing on alchemizing their energy, their frequency, their pain inside them at this time?
Yeah, so the war on consciousness, social engineering, false flags and psyops that have captured people's attention without being able to see through all the many layers or what engineered it or who's behind it. Well, that's all changing. So the way that, people have been relating to, the outer world has been a lot about belief systems, like George just said, and to dissolve, belief systems and access from the higher self, from the intuition, the electric magnetic energies and how they work together, the masculine, the feminine, how that relates to the planetary grid network, how the ether element is part of that alchemical process. It's really that unconditional love. It's really that ability to shift perception, to turn lead into gold. When we dip down, just like the Hawkins scale, down into the lower frequencies of guilt, anger, emotions that deserve respect and need a voice, but we don't want to stay stuck in them. We don't want to make decisions from them. When we, invite it back up by allowing ourselves to understand it and give it voice, then, we connect it with greater meaning. We connect it with like the fire horse, action, passion, inspiration, instead of fire being anger and with nowhere to put it, without a deeper understanding of where it's rooted in or where it's coming from. Because the thing is, the independence of the horse has a lot to do with leadership, and sometimes it is sparked from anger. But if the anger doesn't have a place to land because it can't make sense out of anything, then it can be very destructive. That fire can be very destructive and very out of control. And it's the same thing with all the elements. So to me, the alchemy is turning the shadow through understanding it and bringing it unconditional love, and bringing it up to the light, up to wisdom, up to a place of coherence. and transparency. When we do this and understand the maintenance of what it means to be human in order to establish that, we're creating alchemy all the time. We're transforming. We're not allowing ourselves to be hooked into something that all of a sudden causes rapid aging, causes disease. And I think this is really a time where people are going to overcome these things without the trajectory or the diagnoses and how that's labeled. Now it's going to consider the person on a holistic level and work with the epigenetics, with thought forms. How does that impact the body? Because alchemy is a law of creation. And the law of creation of alchemy is that we can turn, this heavy density, into gold. We can bring heaven into earth. The physical matter that all these earth signs represent are opposite water signs. When we bring emotionality into the equation, but we purify it through the filter of, wisdom and honesty and transparency and authenticity, then the physical, shifts and changes. We do, grid work without realizing it. We collapse control systems that have been embedded in the earth herself, in the geoengineering, in the elements of earth, air, fire, water. We create the alchemy from winning the war from within. Then we're not socially engineered anymore. How are we going to be in a planet that's geoengineered if we as elemental beings are no longer controlled and having our elements be weaponized and used against us so that we stay unconscious but reactive? Now it's coherence. And when we react, we gain more knowledge, more wisdom, and more accountability so that we can direct those elemental energies in a way that serves the balance. Just like it rains to balance. Every elemental is designed to create equilibrium, but it's been tampered with. And that's why the human gets, so ill, because our inner elementals have turned into just reactions. And that's why they call it toxic, because it hasn't alchemized. It hasn't been brought into meaning. It hasn't been brought into understanding the root, the depths, and the reasons why. And that's where the alchemy comes in, is self-knowledge, self-awareness, turning the tree of knowledge back into the tree of life.
Just amazing, amazing, amazing. I could keep going with you two, but we have to bring this to an end for this month. But you'll be back next month with more great astrology. So for now, George, is that one of your beautiful paintings behind you? If so, tell us how we can get it, and tell us how we can find you, please.
I've just had my whole website updated, which is really nice. So georgehLewis.com. That's the best way to find me if people want readings, sound healing, or my, to see more of my art through the website, my new portal.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. And Laura, how can we get hold of you, darling?
CosmicGaia.org is my website, and pretty much everything, it should be there. Substack and my social media channels and the events I'll be doing. And I look forward to meeting next month. It's been so wonderful to be with both of you.
And you
Great.
too. Yeah,
It's
no,
always a pleasure.
it's so lovely. It's so lovely. And you two are so great in your art of astrology, and it does blend so beautifully. You're very different in explaining what everything means, because there's a learning, a lesson, a body of knowledge in, of course, what each planet is giving at certain times in the cycles. And yet the way you both describe it, very different, yet it collapses in together and just makes perfect sense, which is great, because we all learn in different ways. We all observe and absorb information in different ways. So it's just the perfect partnership. Thank you so much, George H. Lewis. Thank you so much, Laura Eisenhower. And I am Dani Henderson. And as always, I so send you love from my heart to yours. Just to let you know what's coming up on this great channel, of full disclosure, we got the great Fiona Rose Diamond coming on. She's the one in England who started the marches against digital ID. Can you imagine me and her together? Two Celtish birds. It's going to happen. I've also got Kathy O'Brien coming back on regarding Bohemian Grove. We've got Alex Collier, the great Andromedan, coming back on with JP, the Army Insider. Tony Rodriguez, also a military insider. He was kidnapped by the American military. Fascinating, absolutely mind-blowing information there. We've got Beverly Rose coming back on, and Aquana coming back on, and many, many more. And Laura Eisenhower and George H. Lewis next month. Until then, my darlings, lots of love. See you soon. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, George.
Thank you, Dani. Thank you, George.